Hi everyone. Today I'm doing a review on the South Korean television show Tunnel. Just so you are aware, there are two South Korean media productions that are named Tunnel. This is not referring to the movie Tunnel on Netflix. This is a South Korean sci-fi thriller television show called Tunnel. Tunnel stars Choi Jin-Hyuk as Park Kwang Ho, Lee Si-ah as Shin Yoon-suk, Hyun-min as Kim Seon-jae, Lee Yoon-young as Shin Jae-yi, and Kim Min-sang as Mok Jin-woo. Basically, this whole story is about in 1986, there's this detective by the name of Park Kwang Ho who is investigating a series of murders, and he thinks he finds the murderer at one point and begins to chase this murderer into a tunnel. As he chases this murderer into a tunnel, he actually is transported 30 years into the future, into the year 2016, where he discovers that this murderer is actually still on the loose. So we're going to go over a couple different things I'm going to address about the show. We're going to address the cinematography. We're going to address the acting. We're going to address the story. We're going to address my issues and my gripes, and then finally my conclusion of what I think about this show. So we're going to tackle it from several different angles. So first of all, the cinematography. Cinematography in the show, it's good. I don't have any gripes or any problems with the cinematography. It's always good. The lighting is always perfect. There were a couple episodes where some characters got in and out of focus, but that was very few and far between, so it's not even a big issue. Let's go on to the acting in this show. I have to say, one thing I really liked about the show was all the actors in the show and the way they interacted with each other. Everyone interacted well off of each other. You didn't see a character who wasn't properly engaging another character. Everyone did a really great job of interacting well with each other. Something else that was really good about the acting was that the main character played by what's his name? Choi Jin-Hyuk, and once again he's playing the main character, Park Kwang Ho. The chemistry between him and his wife in the show, I thought was very authentic. It seemed very authentic. It seemed very real. It didn't seem forced or it didn't seem awkward. If you remember my review for the K2, that was one of my gripes with the chemistry between the main character in the K2 and his love interest. The romance seemed forced. It didn't seem organic. But in this show, the romance between the detective and his wife, it seems authentic, and I actually enjoyed it. Something else about the actors and the character in the characters in the show was each character in the show had qualities that you loved and you hated about them. What I mean that in the sense of, not in the sense of the writing. I mean that in the sense of, like any normal person that you meet, there's certain things you like about the character, there's things you don't like about the character. And every character was so well fleshed out that you ended up seeing good qualities in all of them. And it made every character seem at least emotionally connectable, because they were very three-dimensional. To give an example, there was a character in the show who had done a series of very bad things. Initially, you meet this character, you're thinking, he's just a piece of scum. You just can't stand him. But when you get further into his backstory, it almost causes you to feel a little bit of sympathy for him because of something that one of his parents did to him that was, really jacked up, really messed up. I really liked the fact that they were able to do that, create that type of three-dimensional character with the heroes and the villains. So that's something I always enjoy, are characters who you, even if you may not like the character, you can understand the character, and they're realistic in that sense. Another great character that I have to shine a light on in this show is the character played by Lee Yoo-yung. as the professor in the show. This character, I'm not going to give too much information about this character, but I'll mention a couple details about this character, very brief details, so you can understand a couple things about her. This character is a professor working at a university who's a criminologist. Right off the bat, when you meet this character is kind of creepy and almost, I would say, you would say almost like an autistic slash character who has a little bit of Asperger's. That was the type of character that Lee Yoo-yung was playing, and she did it so well. I really tip my hats off to her. She played a character who was very interesting to watch and very engaging. And there's a story arc in the TV show that she goes through that I found engaging and satisfying. So I would say that's one of the characters in the show who, when you watch it, you will really enjoy. The main character, Park Kwang Ho, he's a likable character, but he has some flaws that are just kind of like, come on, man. Like, you know, and it's funny because he has like almost a machismo type of character, but he's a likable character, but he has like some flaws that, you know, when you watch it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But so let's get into the actual story. The story has a lot of twists and turns that you're not expecting. Some twists in the story to an American audience or to a foreign audience who are not familiar with South Korean television shows or movies. They may seem cheesy, but over the years I've been watching a lot of South Korean movies and TV shows, and I've come to appreciate certain things that other countries may think is cheesy, but me personally, I like it and I appreciate it. But for the most part, 90% of the plot twists and the twists and turns that happen in the story are things that I think everyone would enjoy and like. One of the things I also liked about the show, it had a good amount of humor to balance out the heavy content in the show. There's a lot of heavy subject matter in the show. It needed to have a degree of humor because otherwise it would be a very dense, dark, and heavy show. And it kind of reminds me of how, and if any of you watch any of the Marvel superhero movies, it's the same type of balance that you have going on there. If any of you watch any of the Marvel movies, they have a strong degree of drama going on, but they also have a little bit of lightheartedness to take some of the denseness off of you. That's one thing that I really enjoyed about the show. There's actually in one of the episodes, one of the characters, he smacks another character in the back of the head, and I was just howling laughing when he did that. It's because of the reason behind it. It was so funny and it was so out of the blue, but it was really humorous. So that's one of the things I really liked about the show. Another thing I liked about the show was how the show chose to reveal who the killer was over time. The show really took its time. It did it in a way that was full of twists and turns and that showed you a killer who was well thought out. I liked also the way they used different characters' memories to communicate when something in the past had changed. I'm not going to go deep because it would reveal spoilers, but when you watch the show, the way the show reveals how something has been altered is through someone's memories. And I thought it was a really clever way of showing that piece of information. Really quick, some gripes I had with the show. I notice sometimes when I'm watching, certain TV shows out of South Korea, there's a tendency to have characters narrate or speak out loud things that they're thinking. Now, I know this is used as a technique so that the audience would know certain things that the character is feeling or thinking, but sometimes it's a little bit overused and it kind of takes you out of the show for a second. And that's one of the gripes that I had with it. There were times where the characters are by themselves and they're basically talking out loud and expressing certain ideas that I don't think they needed to express because the show had already done a good job of showing you that before, And that's one of the things, if any of you have ever been to film school, they teach you in writing class is be careful not to use exposition too much with your characters because it can cause the audience to take themselves out of the story. personality. So sometimes the show did that. It didn't do it a lot, but it did it enough to bother me. Another thing that I had a problem with was there were times that the main character, Park Kwang Ho, whenever he saw a criminal or something like that, and because of his personality, he has a very over the top, old school machismo alpha male type of personality. And he would sometimes yell out when he was chasing a criminal, like, "Hey, stop right there." And it was just kind of like, sometimes that was his way of alerting the criminal, like, "Hey, stop right there." And the criminal's already off and going instead of just going and getting the criminal. And sometimes that got a little bit annoying. But the only reason why it didn't bother me too much was because I understood they presented the character to you in a way in which you understood that him doing that was consistent with his personality. So I would expect him to do something like that. But having said that, it got a little bit annoying at some points because I'm like, come on, man, learn your lesson and know that every time you yell far away for a criminal to stop, they're usually going to run, you know? So, but anyways, that was one of my gripes with the show. He does it a lot in the show, but sometimes it's kind of funny and other times it's kind of annoying. Another gripe that I had with the show is that in the show, whenever the police officers would be investigating a suspect or a murderer, I don't know if this is like a law in South Korea or if this is just something they do with TV shows, but in order for them to prosecute the criminal, the criminal would literally have to confess with their mouth the crime in order for them to prosecute them. So that in American culture, that's not there, you know, in our justice system. It seems like that might be something in the South Korean criminal justice system. I don't know. Maybe anyone who's from South Korea or is familiar with their law, you can let me know. You can write it down in the comments or something to inform us about that. But that was something that kind of took me off a little bit. Another thing was that there's, you know, I guess in South Korea, I'm not sure, there's another law that I'm not familiar with. It seems that there's a statute of limitations for murderers. Like, you know, if X amount of time has passed, a murderer can't be prosecuted or something like that. And that's something that was kind of threw me off. And if that's the fact of the matter of the law of the land in South Korea, then, you know, so be it. But it was just something I found a little bit strange. And there were some episodes where the police officers would be at a crime scene and they would have no gloves on and they would be touching different things without gloves. In America, that would be considering contaminating the crime scene. And I don't know if maybe they have a different process by which they process crime scenes in South Korea. And once again, this is one of those cultural things that I'm not familiar with. So maybe I'm not informed about enough to talk about it. But it was something that was a little bit off-putting when I was watching the show. But what I would rate it, I would give this show a 9 out of 10 because of the characters, because of the story. It was an engaging story. It was very suspenseful. You know, when you're watching the show, it's very suspenseful. A lot of good twists and turns. I kind of have a soft spot for sci-fi thrillers. I really enjoy sci-fi thrillers. This show was probably be in my top 20 list for sci-fi thriller TV shows, or even maybe my top 10. It was a really good show. I loved all of the characters. I connected with them. I think the ending and the reveal of who the killer was all cleverly laid out and done. So I'm going to give this show a 9 out of 10. I strongly recommend. If you have not watched the show, give it a chance. It is a really good show. All right, so that's my review. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.